everyone. I'm Sandy Peckinpah, and I want to invite everyone on this scope to participate in a big way, because your feedback will mean so much to me. Liberty, thank you for joining me. I'm going to be scoping about using your life and your story as the backdrop for the greatest life you can ever imagine. And so I'm Sandy Peckinpah. I am a woman's mentor and coach, and I also help people with writing and life after loss. So I'm excited for you to be here at Liberty. Thank you so much for joining me. And I'm going to flip the camera around. There we go. Hello. Yay! Air Force 1970, thank you so much for joining me. I'm from a military background. My dad is a retired admiral. I'm really proud of him. He's 88 years old, as feisty as ever, and I am so grateful to still have him in my life in such a big way. So thank you for the hearts, too. Again, I'm Sandy Peckinpah, and I guess I want to talk to you. I have a whole outline of things that I want to talk to you about, but I titled this, How Writing Changes Your Life and Your Impact. Oh, I bet you miss your dad. You know, and this is a time approaching of Thanksgiving for what we have and what we've had in the past. Carrie, thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful. And, I'm having a few more people join me today. Thank you. Hi, I'm so glad you're here. So anyway, again, it's How Writing Changes Your Life and Your Impact. Mark Fitness, thank you so much for joining me. I so appreciate it. And again, Air Force 1970, thank you. I appreciate it. So I want to tell you just a little bit about my background so that you understand how writing became my passion and how helping people with the next act of their life, I like to call it, because for me, writing in acts is all about exactly how life unfolds before us in acts. You know, we have different incidents in our lives that generate different things in our lives, and one thing influences another, after another. And so that's what I wanted to talk about tonight is there something inside of you that calls you to write? Is there a little whisper inside of you that wants to tell your story? Because I'm guessing if you're on this scope, there is. And I want to share with you how important it is to acknowledge that whisper, because your story is your legacy. Your story has meaning and purpose. Your story is unique to you, and there is something about your story that can change people's lives. And that's why it's so important we acknowledge that whisper. I don't know about you, Liberty, you're a writer. Writing is more important to me than food or air, my body, and I argue about that too. I agree. I know that in fact, I even do this on vacations. I take my computer because for me, writing fuels me so much that I can't not write. But it wasn't always that way. I used to participate in my husband's writing, and he was a television writer he wrote television series and movies. You might remember them. One of my all-time favorites was Beauty and the Beast. I like writing, it's true, but actually I just came in to see you as you are interesting. Thank you. Well, thank you for saying I'm interesting. So let me just share with you a little bit about how I started writing on my own and found the courage to do it, because I was always a little bit afraid to put it out there, to be transparent, to share my story, to be real. And so my husband was a professional writer. He started writing when we first got together. We started creating stories together. But he was always the one who wrote. I would help him create characters. I'd help him create storylines. I'd help him create backstory, all of those things. But he would put the words on the paper, and then we'd read it out loud together. Oh, thank you for joining me, Wayne CC. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for the hearts. So we would create these stories for television, and there were several television series that he did. And as I said, my favorite is Beauty and the Beast on CBS with Ron Perlman and Linda Hamilton. And then he created a series called Wolf with Jack Scalia. That was also on CBS. And he also did Silk Stockings, Sliders, which is a sci-fi show. It was on for many years, and I actually was an actor on that show as well. And so when we used to write together, I always longed to tell my own story, but I was afraid, because I was afraid to call myself a writer, because he was a writer, and I felt like I wouldn't be good enough. Well, at some point in my life, something called me so loud that I couldn't not write, and it was the birth of my daughter. And I shared that yesterday. I hope any of you watching from yesterday don't get, tired of this story. But my daughter was born with a birth defect. She was born with a facial defect, and oddly enough, we were writing the series Beauty and the Beast for CBS at that time. And David and I had many discussions about what it would be like to have a deformity that would be so difficult to be in public, because that was Vincent the Beast. And yet Linda fell in love with him and who he was and his spirit, and Linda Hamilton. And it was such a beautiful love story. And so we spent countless hours talking about what this would be like, and lo and behold, a few months later I give birth to a daughter born with a facial cleft, and it was very severe. And I thought, what can I do? My husband's writing a series about people with a facial difference. What can I do for my daughter? And I decided I would pick up my pen and write my own book. And that's what I did. And I wrote a book called Rosie the Imperfect Angel. In fact, that's it. And I decided that this would be a way to take the book into school with her when she started kindergarten and read the story, and it would be an entree to those other kids so that they could have an understanding of what she might be feeling and why she looks the way she does, and that she would be going through surgeries and all kinds of things that would be difficult for her over the years. And so that was my first sense that I needed to write, and it scared me to death, but I did it. I committed to it, and I was so grateful that I did, because you know what? It did make a difference. It changed the way people saw her when she first started kindergarten. And so the thing that I wanted to share with you is that if you've ever said, I wish I could tell my story, I wish I could write my book, here are some reasons that you might consider. Is it fulfilling a dream? Because if it is, that's number one. Is your calling fulfilling a dream? Do you by any chance know Mariana Hill? She's a friend of mine. Mariana Hill. No, I don't know her. Tell me how I would know her. I would love to know. So number one, you're fulfilling a dream. And why do you have that dream? I had a dream to write, but I was always afraid. And I think it was the dream to express myself. And I think that's number one, it's to start exploring why you're having that whisper of wanting to have the dream of writing your story. Because I can't tell you how many people, Freda's Wife and Godfather 2? I loved that movie. No, I don't know her, but wow, all of the Godfather movies I loved. I could watch them over and over again. So anyway, many people say that, and many people don't do it. And they get to the end of their life and they say, I wish I had written my book. And that's why it's so important to consider getting the pen to paper and writing your story. Number two, you believe that writing is your legacy and your purpose. And I believed that. I believed my purpose was to write a book for my daughter and help her start school. And that is such an important acknowledgement that I had been given the legacy to write her a book. And I'll tell you what else is that book. I couldn't have known then the impact that my book had on people until years later. Liberty, it's my life's purpose to use my writing to share the very challenging lessons I've learned. And Liberty, your writing is so powerful. I hope everybody follows you, because the story is a book too. Yes. You know what? You're right. Thank you for saying that. I shared it in the scope yesterday, and I'm hoping that I'm not repeating myself too much, but the miracle of that book is that 20 years after I wrote Rosie the Imperfect Angel, I got a call from a gentleman who said, I was one of those little boys in the school where you and Melissa Gilbert, who went to the schools with me, reading the book. I read that story. When you read that story, it resonated so much with me. It helped me feel good about myself. And now it's 20 years later, and I'm a music producer. And I want to tell your story, and I want to record it as a spoken word CD. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Liberty. I appreciate that. This was Michael Alden. And today he's a music producer on Broadway. He recorded my book, Rosie the Imperfect Angel, as a gift to helping other children come to terms with how they feel about themselves and the differences that they may be feeling. And, it's out of print. I know sometimes you can find it on Amazon, but it's out of print now because it was written in 91 and went out of print, I think, several years later. But wow, thank you. I appreciate that. So that story just was so meaningful to me because I didn't know the impact that little boy had, the impact my book had on that little boy. And that he wanted to pay it forward and share it with the world as a possibility of helping others feel good about themselves. And I'll tell you, that meant the world to me. And he did record it. Melissa Gilbert did the spoken word CD. Marlee Matlin wrote the liner notes. The Moscow Symphony Orchestra did the music. Michael wrote the music. And do you know, it made it all the way to the Grammy ballot in 2009. It was a miracle, and I am so grateful. So when I say you never know really what your legacy will hold for other people, that's step 2. You believe your writing could be a legacy, and your purpose in life is that I didn't know till 20 years later that it had this kind of impact. So number 3, you want to help people. You want to have an impact on the world. Everyone's story has value and purpose. Every single one of you, because every single one of you is unique, and every single one of you has a story that has value and purpose in someone else's life. And so that's why it's so important to look at your life, the whole picture. And I have I'm excited. I'm going to be doing a 5-day writing challenge for everybody who might want to get started writing. I'm going to be doing it on Periscope, absolutely free. I have worksheets that I'm designing, everything to get you started, to put pen to paper and recognize the value that your life story has to others. And so remind me to tell you about that a little bit later. So the next thing is that number 4 is you want to use your life, to examine your life in a book, or writing it down, or in a blog, and it gives you perspective that you didn't know you had. And believe me, knowing your story and your perspective changes once it comes out of your head and onto the paper. Once you start writing, my writing teacher used to say, whatever you read comes out the end of your pen. And, okay, Mark, thank you so much for joining me. I'm sorry that you have to go, but thank you. You've added a lot to my scope. I appreciate it. So whatever you read comes out the end of your pen, meaning the better quality books that you read, then the better your writing gets. But I also like to say that whatever you've experienced in your life, when it comes out, thanks, good night from London. Wow, all the way to London, I'm thrilled. Thank you, good night. Once it comes out the end of your pen and onto the page, then guess what? You become an observer of your life, not the participant. And it's a way of examining your life and giving new meaning and value to it. Because once I put my life into chapters, once I laid it out in an outline, I started using the outline and taking each event in my life as a positive and a negative. What happened to me, how it felt, what it did for me in a positive way, and how it changed me. And so that's a really good thing for all people to do. And I'm also a certified grief recovery specialist with the Grief Recovery Institute in Los Angeles. I've helped people through the grief recovery process. And one of the things that I do is help them put a story, their life story, on a timeline. And it is amazing how analyzing your story, really looking at it from a positive and negative perspective, can change your life and give you a launching pad. And I'll tell you what that is at the end of this. Writing is one of the most effective tools of healing. Any therapist will probably tell you to start a journal. It's one of the most effective things you can do, and that's one thing that I talk about in my book. And I wanted to share a little bit about my book that I wrote after Rosie. I wrote 2 books in between, and then another book called me. And it was after the loss of my son. I lost my 16-year-old boy suddenly to bacterial meningitis. I didn't think I could live anymore. I didn't think I could bear the pain. But what I discovered is that writing helped me heal. And I knew that if I could just write 1 word in my journal or 2 words in my journal, that I could start the healing process. And so the first sentence in my journal after my son died was, "My son died and my life will never be the same." And that's the truth. And I couldn't write another thing. The next day, I was able to write, oh, thank you, Liberty. The next day, I was able to write a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, until I looked back on a month of writing and realized, wow, I have come so far. But I had so far to go. But my writing gave me hope, because if I had gone this far in a month and I could see it on the written page, I knew that another month would bring me even more. And so years later, I knew that I wanted to help people, and that my book and what the knowledge that I had gotten from the experience of losing my son could help people. So I wrote a book, How to Survive the Worst That Can Happen. And it's a parent's step-by-step guide to healing after the loss of a child. And I know that this book is my son's legacy, not just my legacy. It's my son's legacy, because he left me in care of his legacy and a purpose. And that was to help others heal. And I am so proud of this book. It came out last year, and I am so very proud. I've won 8 awards, and the awards themselves reflect the fact that it's getting attention and going to the places where it needs to be. And so this book is having an impact in the right places, and I am so grateful. And I know that there's something inside of you, some experience that's happened to you. And just think about it, and please share it if you feel something rising up within you that you want to talk about in a book, because don't ignore those feelings. You have so much inside of you, a whole life that is waiting to come out. And it's going to benefit some other people, not just yourself. So anyway, a book is an opportunity to heal. Writing a book is an opportunity to heal. Thank you for all the hearts, Liberty. You know what? I passed the 5,000 mark. I'm so excited. Did you see I put on Twitter, I posted a picture saying it was time to have a cappuccino and a scope, and this was the cup. Did you see that? It says moi, me, in French. It's my cappuccino hour. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, let me just check my notes, is that a book gives you greater insight and understanding, not only to yourself, but to others. And it's a way of being a better friend, a better daughter, a better child. You know, it's a way of really looking at life from a different perspective. And so I think that's really important, is that it can give you greater insight and understanding. And then the next one is it's an opportunity to seize your greatness and say, look what I've done. I healed from this experience. I had no idea I would survive. How great is that? And I did, and you did, and you have so much to write about. You have so much to put on the page and help other people. Liberty, your writing has helped so many people, and you talk about it and speak about it. And, you know, it's just that satisfaction of knowing you're making a difference. And number 5, and here's something that can help you in business. It builds your credibility. You want to build your credibility. If you are a coach, a therapist, a consultant, a motivational speaker, a spiritual leader, or if you have a product that you want to sell, or you want to become a leader in your industry, a book gives you credibility. I can't tell you how many times people have interviewed me because I had a book. You know, I have been through a lot of life experiences, and you know, I've been on television many times with my books, and it's because I have a book that suddenly I have credibility and I become a leader in what I'm talking about. And that kind of influence is so gratifying because I know I'm helping people, and that's why I'm doing it. And so I urge you to consider writing a book or a blog. It doesn't matter. Anything that you write, a book, a blog, an article, in a magazine. Liberty, you've written for Huffington Post. I mean, how great is that? You have an influence on sharing your message with the world, and it's the vehicle of writing. And the bonus tip, okay, so here we go. The bonus tip of knowing your story, of putting it on paper, is that you can design the next part of your life. It's a launch pad because you get to look at it from a new perspective, because you will look at the things that you have accomplished in your life. You'll look at the things and you'll start remembering the things that people tell you, like, Sandy, you know, you're such a good writer. That article that you wrote, oh, I hope you do more. I hope you write more. You know, that's what my calling is. And I didn't know it when I was helping my husband write scripts. I didn't know that my destiny was to write books that could help people because I was afraid. It's very natural to be afraid. Liberty, how scary is it to sit in the chair and write from a blank page? Can you share that? Stephen Pressfield talks about it in his book, and if you haven't read it, please do. I'm going to do a whole scope on it. The War of Art, not the art of war, the War of Art. Not at all for me. Okay, you know what? For me, a blank page scares me to death because I have to sit down and I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to write about? And all it takes, Stephen Pressfield sits down in the chair. He says the most important thing is getting your butt in the chair. And that is the hardest part for me because I can do 10 million things around my house and have the hardest time sitting in the chair and getting started writing. But that was before. In 2012 was when I started seriously committing to my writing. But still mortified of a blank page. Yes. Me too, by the way. Me too. Well, Liberty, you know what? That's so wonderful that you feel that way, that they scream possibility. That's a beautiful way to reframe it too. And and Carrie, you're like me. I think, okay, I know I'm supposed to write a blog today, and whew. But you know what? All it takes is one sentence. And then it flows for me. It's just getting in the chair. And that's what I talked about. I think yesterday I talked about the setting a time and a place, and I put it in the calendar. I write from 4 to 8. And that's how I finished my book so quickly, because I was committed to finishing it. And so, again, knowing your story is knowing the secret to the next part of your life. So I have a client that I worked with, and she started writing, and she started writing her framework of her life. For me, it's like all the words are piling up in my head trying to get to the front of the line. Oh, yes. And you know what? I talked about that in yesterday's scope, how you don't want to try and edit while you're writing. All want to come out at once. Yes, you don't want to try and edit while you're writing, because the part of your brain that edits is different than the part of your brain that the writing flows from. And so my husband used to call it marinating. He would write 10 pages on a script, and then he'd let it sit for a while and wouldn't go back to it until the next day, and wouldn't try and edit it. And then actually once he finished a whole script, he'd let it marinate for a week or so before I read it, completed, edited, did all of that. And that gave him a new perspective. And I find that so helpful in my writing, is to write it, let it flow, let the creative energy just come forth, and write, don't edit, and put it away, and the next day you'll be amazed at what you've put on the screen or in your computer, or even if you handwrite it. Whatever you do, you'll be amazed at what you have on the page, because if you get in there and try and criticize it too early, you're gonna ruin what you've written, because the critical brain isn't fully turned on, and the creative brain is turned on and getting all mixed up. So anyway, that's my tip. But so let yourself recognize your talents. Oh, I was telling about a woman who didn't realize that one of her greatest talents, until she looked at her timeline on her life and did her story arc, she didn't realize that one of her talents was in dog rescue and dog training. And she started a whole new thing after that. She had lost a child, actually. And she was looking for something to fill her life, and something to transition her thoughts and her sorrow. And this was her way of transitioning. And it was a beautiful, beautiful thing for her. So again, the recap on that is that number one, there's so many reasons that you have to write. One is that you're fulfilling the dream. If you've ever said, oh, I've always wanted to write my life story, well, do it. Number two, you believe your writing is your legacy and your purpose. I believe that with my whole heart, but I didn't believe it when I first started. But something greater than myself called me to write. And if that's you, put your pen to paper and get started. Number three, you want to help people and have an impact on the world, because everyone's story has value and purpose. Number four, you want to use it to examine your life, to give you perspective in knowing your story, because your story has value and purpose. Number 5, you want to build your credibility in what you do. Maybe you're a coach or a consultant, or you have a product that you're so passionate about, you want to write about it. That's reason to write. That's number 5. And the bonus tip is that knowing your story is the secret to knowing the next part of your life. It's the launch pad to the next part of your life. So that is my Periscope today, and I am so grateful that you joined me, and I'm so grateful. I got over 5,000 hearts, and when I first started, I thought, oh, how do you ever get to 5,000? Wow, thank you, Carrie. I so appreciate that. And I'm so grateful that you've hung in there with me, and I hope that it inspired you to write and to set a time to write, because if you don't set a time and an intention, you just keep putting it off. Don't put it off anymore. Pick up your pen tonight or your computer tonight, and even if it's just one sentence, like I told you, I wrote when my son died, one sentence. But you know what? It led to others, and it led to my healing, and I'm so grateful. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about finding the sweet spot that grabs an audience. So if you think that you are writing about you and for you, not necessarily. I have a couple of ideas for you. Thank you for sharing your beautiful spirit and wisdom. Thank you, Liberty. I'm so grateful you were here. Carrie, thank you. I'm so glad you hung in with me. And I am going to be doing a Periscope 5-day writing challenge. I don't want to forget this. I'm going to get you all started, if you haven't already, or at least continuing to write. I'm going to help you do it. It's going to be a great challenge. I've already got 3 people signed up for it, and I'm so excited. And if you want to be a part of it, either message me on Twitter, and there you go, at Sandy Peckinpah. I'm on Twitter and Periscope at the same, Sandy Peckinpah. Or you can email me and ask me to put you on an email list so that I can notify you when it's time for the 5-day Periscope Writing Challenge to come out. And that's my email, sandy@sandypeckinpah.com. Very simple. So again, thank you for joining me. I am so thrilled you hung in there with me, and I will be back tomorrow, and you inspire me. I am so grateful. Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.